Welcome to Digication Scholars Conversations. I'm your host, Jeff Yan. In this episode, you will hear part two of my conversation with Reshad, Director of Language Technology and Academic Support at Oberlin College and Conservatory. More links and information about today's conversation can be found on Digication's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Full episodes of Digication Scholars Conversations can be found on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. I actually had recently a pretty amazing experience myself
Oh,
with this. I was traveling in Alaska, um, and um, and I visited a group there, and this group is just really an unbelievable group, and it's a group that is part of what's called a Fab Lab. And so it's like the fabrication lab, and it's a pretty big thing all around the world. It's well funded, and they do a lot of 3D printing and whatnot. But what's amazing about this group is that this entire lab there was established for native Alaskan kids.
oh, awesome.
So K-12 students can basically be there. It's their, you know, home away from home after
Oh,
school
wonderful.
program. However, like there's a lot
Yeah.
of ways to look at it. And then I'm kind of always wondering, well, so what do they do there? Like people
Mhm.
always they always, provide amazing examples that makes me just realize how little I think, and
Mhm.
and they were showing they had an object there that they created that said, this is how we can study and see how our ancestors build canoes.
Oh, wow.
And these are native
Wonderful.
Alaskan canoes that, I mean, they were like, many, I don't know how many years of experience had been put into this to perfect these canoes, because they use this stuff to fish,
Yeah.
and they need it in order to sustain. They don't fish for fun. They're fishing
Yeah.
because they need the fish for, for the oil, for potentially for different day-to-day objects, that they
Hey.
make with, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a pretty amazing
Yeah.
thing for them to be able to sort of use technology in that way to understand and study it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's such a great age to do it where, I mean, you have an audience where they're hungry for that kind of tactile experience and a way to, work those creative muscles.
Yeah,
And they're willing and able to do it if they have the resources. I mean,
right.
our kids are pretty ready to go.
And I think that this is the part too, though, which is where, and I just appreciate this part so much. I wanted to just talk about it a little bit more, which is, look, there is something in, at least the geek inside of me, just, like as soon as you said 3D, I'm in, and the 3D printing of objects, and like being able to, just the process of that, it just sounds awesome and fun. And like
Oh, yeah.
the idea of you can just create these things out of thin air, it just, well, it's not thin air, I guess it's the filaments, but still, it feels
Right,
like
right.
it's
The
something
models
out of
are
thin air.
thin air, right?
Yep. So it's like so much about, being able to use your imagination,
Yeah.
and, being able to see. But 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 to me, that's almost like just the beginning part of, getting people in the door, because the real learning happens when you give them the space and the time to absorb themselves into being able to touch this object and look
Right.
at it and play with it. And that space and time feels like, to me, is really the thing that is, if anything, missing in higher education today. I think that for all the people that are saying, we're not teaching the students enough, I actually think that we might be trying to cramp in too much. We're not giving
Oh,
them
yeah.
space to just digest and
Right.
reflect.
Yeah. I'm in agreement with that. I think that, there's a lot of knowledge that is gained. You have you have the activating objectives, and then you have these objectives that kind of carry out, um, you know, as a result of what you're doing. It's like, how do we leverage these kind of experiences in such a way that we're kind of, you know, we're succeeding in meeting more than one objective at once. I mean, I guess thinking of that from a planning perspective, but then also, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's a true need for these types of experiences for sure.
Now let's switch gear for a minute because you
Sure.
had said that you obviously work with a lot of faculty members as well. Um, what are some of the what have your experience been trying to get faculty members to get engaged into 3D printing, into
Mm.
portfolios, into the kind of you know sort of these new creative ways of teaching and learning? How do you get them on board?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just it starts with a conversation like this. I think that especially with technology that may seem out of reach, kind of uh, like a low stakes conversation about what we can do collaboratively, and that's like relationship building, and then kind of making that a part of the conversation. So the lab is in Peters Hall, which is kind of where a lot of the language faculty and staff are. And so that's been the only way to really get it done. And then there's also been, having some programming too to kind of invite people over. But I feel like the big curricular projects to really get into the classroom have been just conversations and having a fun informal conversation like this one and just seeing what's possible and then experimenting. That's been how it's been done here and at a small community at a small liberal arts college too. I mean, it doesn't feel small, but 3,000 students. We have a lot of staff, but like it's still a good environment for that type of, I guess, that
Mhm.
type of way of interacting and seeing if we can bring people in that way. Yeah.
In your experience working with faculty, in adopting these things, has there been, I don't know, memorable hurdles or
Oh, yeah.
surprises that comes to mind?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, for some, I think it's that $1 million question, like, okay, what's this doing here? Um, and, uh, and answering and responding to that right away. But but even then um, there's, I mean, every person, I work with people who've been teaching for years, and it's not enough to answer that question. They have years of experience of not using that in the classroom and never
Right.
feeling the need of doing it. And um, so yeah, I mean, we have a really kind of interesting conversation where I talk about how I've used it and, uh, and then we see what happens, and maybe not agree, disagree, but still kind of, I feel like people, even though they might disagree, they're still really curious and and they can, yeah, and my colleagues can definitely wrap their heads around the possibilities of doing it. And speaking of like space, a lot of times it's like, when we talk about, these kind of curricular advancements or like these new ideas, we still have to fit it in, you know, and
Right.
so, getting them on board is one thing, but then like, getting to that point where they make space for it in their curriculum for the next class. So, a lot of times these conversations are happening like a year in advance, right? Uh, and so, yeah, and so like, and that's a different type of conversation. And that's another leap, right? It's like that first leap is like, this can make a difference. Oh, I can see how that can make a difference. And the next leap is, okay, we're going to put this in our classroom. We're going to use it, and that second part doesn't always happen, but there's a lot of variables and stakeholders involved in that too. So, and it doesn't mean that they can't have, and there's a lot of like co-curricular or extracurricular experiences that we can still offer at the lab that can give those experiences to students in other ways.
What are some of the, like maybe not so much. purely about them adopting new,
Right.
technologies, and it doesn't have to be that, right? Because they might be doing something super innovative, and
Exactly.
it's just fine. But what are some of the what do you see as some of the biggest hurdles and issues that faculty members face these days? I mean, I know that, students, for example, also face a lot of their own
Right.
issues, uh, and I'm talking to different people in this series of,
Agreed.
podcasts and
Right.
conversations. People had talked about everything from mental health to, the financial burdens and to whatever else. But, as someone who's working with faculty on
Mhm.
a day-to-day basis, and um, what are some of the issues that you see them facing?
Right. I do feel like, um, I kind of wonder if this is more a symptom than
Mm.
cause, but I think like, a symptom of just being kind of overwhelmed or having a plate full is kind of that resistance to, a new platform, whatever the platform is, even if even if whatever platform can help streamline things and provide a certain experience, uh, you know, you know, everyone's kind of overwhelmed. I feel like there is not everyone, but I do think that, faculty, staff in general, and this is across the board. I think in most higher ed institutions, like we were wearing multiple hats, and it takes, a lot of effort. And sometimes there's just not that mental space to
Yeah.
make room for it. And then there's that resistance. And I can certainly empathize with it. And, and then just try to have a normal, try to have kind of a conversation about things and demonstrate it and maybe brainstorm. But, at the end of the day, I think that resistance is, well, people in their, I'm trying to be careful here, but like, they're trying to carry all of this weight, and I think that's what it is. You know what I mean? And whatever that might be, whether it be like, you know, getting an extra chair responsibility, or there's always new needs that come up. I think any good institution is sensitive to the needs of their students
Mhm.
and is
Yeah.
making sure um, that the faculty and staff are able to kind of meet those needs. Um, but that also comes at a price where, you know, yeah, it gets tricky.
It is. It is. I mean, there is an actually, if anything, an ever increasing amount of needs by
Right.
students, and it's not the fault or anything like that. It's more, to me, it feels a lot more. It's about, a changing world, also
Right.
a change of, you know, uh, different sort of support structure that's
Right.
necessary. I mean,
Absolutely.
look, people used to not be able to come out if they are, in the LGBTQ plus
Right.
community, and they may, you know coming out in college was not, it was not a given. It certainly wasn't a, it would be a very scary thing to do. But because of that, college didn't need to have to support people
Right.
who had who who could have had that need.
Right.
But today, many students, I don't think that they necessarily choose to come out during college, but during these formative years, during the years when your brains are still, trying to develop.
Hmm.
We know science, in our biology, that our brains really don't get fully developed until, at least 26 or so.
Right.
Um, and so these are some of the years when certain aspect of life starts to take charge,
Yeah.
and if we're not there to support them, who is, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So these are the types of things that colleges, to me, has taken on the role on doing that. Um, and I'm really not sure first of all, I'm not sure if people would. I would imagine so many people won't agree with me. You know that's what the colleges are doing now. Whether they're supposed to be doing that, I don't.
Right.
I also don't know,
Right.
but it certainly doesn't say that on the degree, on the certificate that
Yeah,
you
that's
get.
an interesting point too. But there is
You
that
know.
level of stakes where, you're trying to enable or facilitate students to participate in this academic community,
Mhm,
to have that buy-in and to
mhm,
feel, that responsibility that, they have something to offer. I mean, what does it take to get them to that point?
right.
It's a lot more than what they did in the 50s for sure. you know?
Right. You
Yeah,
can't just like here's a bunch of stuff, learn it, test it, we're done, right?
yeah,
That
exactly.
that sounds super clean and simple.
Yeah, I know.
And,
Very naive, right? It's like, oh my God.
you can take away the 3D printer now, Abe. We don't need that, right? But it's just yeah, it feels like that. It feels like that the needs of students have changed dramatically,
Yeah,
just absolutely dramatic. I mean, just we were talking about getting them to get a sense of sort of grounding and developing their own passion and all that. That that also sort of almost isn't
yeah,
like people say, what are you going to school to study? What are you going to school for? And students are supposed to just know that. That's hard, right?
right.
That's actually part of the that's one of the hard questions,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
and you're expecting them to just know,
Yeah,
right? As if oh, it was printed on your driver's license. You should know already. Like you
right.
are supposed to be, an engineer. Now go for it, and then you'll be all set. That's
Oh
not how
yeah.
it works,
I mean,
right?
I think in my generation too, I mean, like, um, born in 1978, went to college in the 90s. And, I think that, I guess from my context, my neck of the woods where I grew up, there was still this understanding that like, is go to college, you'll be just fine. You just pick a major, it'll be fine. You know what I mean? There wasn't a lot of support to really kind of engage with, um, and to help you engage with yourself or with the classes in a way and make
Mm,
connections, which
right.
are vital. I mean, you're basically, and that's why there's a lot of second career, right? I think that myself and even my partner as well, we've expanded beyond our degrees, moved on to others, to do what we're doing right now. Um, and not that that wouldn't happen before. I'm not, I mean, I'm not, I guess I'm not, no regrets in terms of my own journey, but there's that sense where, um, you're, and then also there's the economic piece where, you have to kind of, roll with the punches and see the market and see how you can retool to partake and participate in that.
Mm,
But yeah, I wonder what that would have been like to have that type of engagement with, the major, with my fields of study, even though I did feel like I was studying what I was really interested in,
yeah.
linguistics and, language education, at least at the time. Yeah, I just kind of wonder what that would have been like. Where would that reflective process go? Because I do wonder. I mean, you meet every now and then students where this is a part of their practice. Somehow, when they grew up,
Mm,
they developed this habit of keeping a journal,
yeah.
and always kind of reflecting on what they're doing and who they are, and taking power from it. Like it's not this thing you check off the list, but it's like, oh, I'm being energized by this amazing practice. And, I feel like I've come to that point now in my life for sure, in the 30s, but it's like, but, certainly there's no reason why, you know, students can't start this practice earlier, soon. you know what I,
Yeah. Well, I think that that's a really interesting way for me to think about the value of the type of education that you provide at Oberlin, or it's similar. Actually, many similar institutions are trying to crack this nut, right?
right.
Which is how do you engage students beyond? and try to to figure a way to dedicate themselves to doing things that matter. um,
Right.
and you get to define also what matters. You don't get told what matters. And
Yeah.
that's actually a beautiful way of helping them to see the world, and I think as a result can make the world a better place, don't you
Oh,
think?
absolutely. I mean, like having a community of enlightened people engage with
Mhm.
others,
Yeah,
sign me up, right?
yeah,
You know?
absolutely, yeah. The problem, of course, is that it takes a while, right?
Oh, yeah,
So
exactly.
this group of students, they're not gonna, let's take this cohort of like 2021. It'll. I mean, I'm sure some of them are doing great things already, and they
Right.
have been. But we're really not gonna see the bulk of the impact. Like
Right.
10, 20 years from now, right? Like when we come back, and how about we do a Digication Scholars in 2000 and what is it, 41, and
Yeah, there you go. Let's come back to it. Right.
and try to figure out what the then cohort
Yeah.
of Oberlin alum, what they are up to.
Right. I mean, like, it's so interesting how it's like, it's this investment that you really have to go all in on, and you're not going to see the results right away. It's very much like climate change, right? Where you're just kind of like, okay, we have this problem we don't really understand, and we're putting all this resources in, and we're trying to turn the dial, and it's life or death for sure, but we got to do it anyways. I mean, um, anyways, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I went a little
No,
dark there.
it's quite all right. What are some of the, maybe we'll end with something positive too.
All right, there you
What
go.
are
Let's do
what
it.
are some of the what are some of the opportunities that you see students do with things like portfolios,
Right.
moving forward from here? What are some of those like exciting new things that you want to try, or things that you are seeing glimpse of that you're like, oh, that's the edge of the envelope somewhere, like you don't know where it's going, but it looks cool.
Yeah. Well, what I've been seeing, and this is also, faculty led, or facilitated work. We have, professional acting class, and it basically the class is preparing them for the field, just getting them out there and trying to be more hands on as possible, so they can start like a digital professional footprint, to get their name out there, and so I guess this is more of like a teacher project, but it's an example of like, a faculty member trying to, okay, let's, I'm working with this professor, and we're looking at example portfolios, and we call them portfolios, right? In the acting industry, of what, how, what are these public facing websites look like? And let's try to create like a template of sorts that students can use on the platform. And a lot of times these sites are quite simple. It's just a matter of getting those really good professional looking images,
Mhm.
putting together what's called like an acting reel, but really kind of, looking at what the industry is doing and trying to prepare them for it. And that's been, and so I've seen a couple projects like that where there's this immediate transfer, primarily in the fine arts, of what they're doing with that. And so I guess it's more teacher related, but yeah. And so that's been kind of interesting, because there is that kind of excitement, and to have those classes here that really kind of literally getting them ready to move on to that next career. And so that's been kind of interesting. Um, Trying to think of another example. I see one example I think is, you know, I've seen a couple of students where they're using it as a way um, to deliver content. So creating like a podcasting site,
Mhm.
and then just kind of using that as their base for that project. So it's like, students just leveraging it for different projects, and it's kind of neat to see students and it's something you're not going to have with like Blackboard or, I mean, nothing against Blackboard, nothing against Canva. I love those great platforms. But, it's something that you can't do, where,
Mhm.
and so it's a couple of really great examples of students kind of using their creativity and putting it out there. Um, one more example I think is from the entrepreneur office that I collaborate with in the Center for Gage Liberal Arts, and they're using these portfolios as a way for students to give, if they have a product, to give their sales pitch, and so they're doing that kind of typical sales pitch with a video and then pictures of, kind of pictures or images of the service or product they're giving, and pitching it to real investors, and getting feedback on it. And so, um, yeah, it's really kind of cool stuff. And love to, I'm really excited to see what else comes up. And I think like, and this has just been year one with the Center for Engageable Arts. We have a physical space. We're all in this kind of place together. And yeah, I'm excited to see what else we get. I'm sure a lot more creativity is going to come out.
Well, that is just awesome and also very inspiring to hear. Um, I I almost feel like that. By the way, you and I are from the same generation, and I think that
Cool.
sort of looking back, I'm always kind of feel like, well, man, I wish we had stuff like this.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
totally.
I feel like what you said earlier really, um, I really identified with, which was what probably took me 10, 20 years to figure out, could have been condensed into
Right.
those couple years, 4 years, if I was given this space to, like, sort of guided space to and time to just go in and think about these things.
Yeah.
I was working hard, but
Right.
probably working on the wrong thing, to be honest.
For sure. I mean, like, hardworking, rewarding, like the good grades and engagement with these platforms, or, I mean, not platforms, but like whatever academics you're pursuing or business. But yeah, I mean, um, yeah, that the heart, that mindfulness piece, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
is priceless. Yeah.
All right. Well, Abe, it's been just so wonderful talking to you. It's been a long time coming. I've wanted to do this with you for a long time. I'm glad we finally did it.
Yeah, me too. It's
Um,
been a pleasure.
yeah,
We
and
should do this. We should have drinks sometime.
yes, we should. We should do this over drinks. That should have been education conversation
Yeah.
with drinks, a special edition
Oh,
sometimes.
yeah, exactly.
All
If it,
right. Listen, thanks again for sharing all of your insights. It's fascinating. We have that date marked in the future, 2042, wait,
okay.
2041,
Yeah, do it.
where we're gonna have to take a look at where your alumni has gone and done, and let's see if your hypotheses are correct.
Oh,
I
exactly.
suspect, I suspect that it is.
Yeah, let's get that
And
data together.
but actually, I hope that we get to do this more often as well. And I've scheduled some additional time with other folks at Oberlin too. So, folks who are listening, if you like this, look out for more brilliant people from Oberlin in future episodes as well. All right, Abe, thank you again so much, and let's talk again soon. Okay,
Absolute pleasure. Take care. Bye,
take care.
everyone.
Bye. This concludes our conversation. To hear our next episode, be sure to subscribe to Digication Scholars Conversations on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. The Digication Scholars Conversation series is brought to you by Digication, a technology platform powering the most innovative ePortfolio programs in K-12 and higher education. Our website can be found at digication.com. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. Thanks for tuning in.